Okay, let's take this a little bit slower. Here's your list of materials. Now, the first thing I want you to do is take out your Post-it note, and I want you to draw the numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4 clockwise around the top of the Post-it note. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to draw a line from corner to corner that has a nice little curve to it, and then turn it over and color it all in. Now let's cut out that number 1. And remember, it's really good to go from corner to corner with your interesting line. And then we're going to take that, flip it upside down, and turn it and attach it to number 3. So flip it and turn it, attach to number 3. Then we're going to draw a line on side number 2, and then we're going to cut that out. And then we're going to flip it and turn it on side number 4. Again, I've gone right from the corner to the corner. It'll make an interesting shape. And then attach that. And you can see the coloring inside on the left and the bottom side shows us that it's the reflection part. And if you turn it over, you can see the same thing. Now we're going to take our piece of Bristol board or cardboard in our tessellation shape and be very careful and trace an outline so that we can create a stiffer tile for our tessellation shape. And again, this is a rotation tessellation. So there I'm being really careful, and now I've got my drawing of the shape, and now I'm going to very carefully follow those lines and cut it all out. Now I've chosen a fairly complex shape. You might want to try for your first run something that is a little less curvy than this, but make sure that you take your time when you're cutting out your shape and make sure that it's accurate, because that will make all the difference when you lay it down and begin your tessellation drawing. My apologies. This is a reflection tessellation. Reflection. I have to remember that. It is a little confusing when you're creating a few videos at once. So this is the reflection tessellation, and as you can see, I've labeled it reflection tessellation. So now I'm just going to check my cutting abilities and make sure that I've cut it properly. I see that there's a little spot in here that I've got a little more extra, so I'm just going to gently trim that tiny sliver away. Some of you might want to use an X-Acto knife instead of scissors, but I like the scissors. So again, I'm just checking and making sure that my shape is correct. I see another little couple areas where I could correct it. And now I'm pretty satisfied with it. So I'm going to lay it down, and I'm going to take one opportunity and just sort of trace it out and have a look here. And there it is. I can see what it looks like on a piece of paper. I'm checking it, making sure it looks good, flipping it around. Now, one thing I want to do is try and get it so that I can see where the seam is that I made. So I've just lined up my shape and the paper and the original one, and I'm just making a little notation using my ruler there to sort of see where those lines would be. It's a right angle, and I just want to have a little look at that. So just a test to see where it's going to intersect. Okay, now I'm going to get a piece of 8.5-11 bond paper, and I've got my original Post-it note design, and I've got my stiffer cardboard one, and I'm just going to trace it and put an image of that onto my paper. And then I'm going to take it and flip it around so I've got it, the reflected part, and also make a tile tracing of the reflected image of the original. Good. And I'm just going to make a note where those intersection points are. I'm just kind of trying it out to see where those points are actually on the piece of Bristol board as well, so I have that right angle for a later time. Okay, and so now I've got this reflected image, and I'm going to spin it around, and I'm going to have a really good time just looking at it from all different angles. So we're looking at it upside down, sideways, from one side and from the other, maybe on the diagonal. And suddenly, you know, something jumped out at me that I want to do. So I'm going to take the opportunity and draw that first image that I saw. And I think the big thing about doing this is that you become more and more familiar with the shape as you continue to work with it. So taking that time to really look at it and explore those possibilities, it's going to give you a better choice when you get to your final drawing to decide what it is that you might like to do. In this case, I saw a little pterodactyl. So let's do some speed drawing here. This is a pretty simple thing. It's the first thing that jumped out at me. As you can see, I'm just sort of drawing the line aspect of it and getting sort of an idea of what this shape might look like. Done. Going to move around and flip that paper around because I see something else I'd like to draw. And in this case, it's a bison that's showing up. I'm just doing the line drawing for him, sort of working out what he might look like and how that second shape might be an interesting reflection. Okay, I'm happy with those guys as a couple of options, so I'm just going to label those and set them aside, get a new piece of paper. Okay, I'm going to trace those two shapes out again. I think this time I flip them around just so I can get a better idea and take a little bit of time looking at them. Of course, the video here is sped up quite a bit. I spent much more time looking at them, trying to decide what it was that I wanted to see in that shape. And the more you look, the more you will see. In this case, I saw a pretty stereotypical type of tessellation image, which is the bird. So I've decided to make this guy into a cute little cardinal. I'm just finishing off a few little details there, flipping the paper over, taking some time again to look at that image, and I've decided to go this time with another pretty stereotypical tessellation image, which is the fish. I'm going to do an angelfish. So taking some time to sort of figure out where those major lines and elements are. I don't want to do too much detail in the first iteration of my reference drawing, but I also want to imagine what it's going to look like in the final repetition of it. So I am adding a little more detail here than I normally would, along with some detailing, some lines, but I know that I can change those when I work at it. But this is my beginning of how I might find that fish to be sort of an interesting drawing within a tessellation pattern. So there we go. We've got both of them, and we're going to label them. I'm going to set them aside. So now I have 4 good ideas that I can use in my rotation tessellation. And now I'm going to get the final drawing paper ready to go. And what I want to do, because these are roughly 3" by 3" tessellation tiles that we've made, I want to make a 9" by 9" perfect square, as perfect as I can get it, within my sketchbook. Now my sketchbook is 11 inches by 14 inches, so you'll need paper that's a little bit bigger than the 9 inches by 9 inches. And then I'm going to sort of figure out how to make that 9" square inside there. So I've measured a distance from the bottom, and then I'm going to just draw a light line across there, being careful to line up all of those little ticks that I made, which will give me a straight edge, because I'm not working with a triangle and a drafting table here. I'm just working on my drawing table here at home. And then I'm going to measure up and see how far 9 inches is from that original baseline that I've made. And I'm going to make a little tick at the 9" mark so that I have it sort of centered within that drawing paper that I have in my drawing pad. And because I know that this sketch is going to take me a while, I've done it within my drawing pad so that I know it stays safe, it's not going to get rumpled. And as often things do when there are more than one project going on in our house anyhow. And so just going across the top there, making sure that I have the measurement at the bottom lined up for 9 inches, making a series of small marks across the top. And then I'm going to line all those up. And then I should have a distance of 9 inches from the top to the bottom. And see how I'm being just a little careful there, making sure that I have it correct. There we go. So there's my 9 inches from top to bottom. Now I want to do it from side to side. And sometimes the way I do that is I find the center to start with. So the center of my paper, the paper's a little bit less than 14 inches. So I have to make sure that I have that mark correct. Then I can measure 4.5 inches out from there. And I'll know that that's where my mark is on the side to make a 9-inch square. Oh, I guess I'm going to start on the left here. And there's the 9 inches. I'm just going to go back again and make sure that's correct. Now I'm pretty good at noting when something is at a 90-degree angle. So I don't have too much trouble figuring that out when I'm just working with my ruler. But you might want to make a few tick marks all the way across in order to make sure that you have those lines on the side perpendicular to the baseline and the top line. Of course, if you have a compass at home, you could definitely use that as well to find the 90-degree angle. And I'm just taking my time with this to make sure that my measurements are correct, that I have it sort of seated within the right space on the drawing itself in my sketchbook, so that I have it all ready to go, and I'm really happy with where that 9 inches of drawing space is going to be within my area. So take some time with this. Again, this one isn't sped up. This video is not sped up as much as some of the other ones, but it'll give you an idea how to slow down and see. I'm finding that beautiful, nice square within my sketchbook, and that's going to be my drawing area. That's where I'm going to find out how to place the tiles in this reflection tessellation. Checking again. I'm looking for the center. I'm going to make a few ticks up and down because I'm going to draw a quadrant on this square. So you want to make the ticks at like just some light marks, about 4.5 inches all the way up, and then you're going to draw a line from the top line to the base line, and that will divide the paper in half. And then we're going to do the same to divide it in half again. So we have 4 separate areas within our square. And you can do this with any size piece of paper, and depending on how detailed you want to get, the 3-inch square is a pretty good size to get just a couple of rotations within a 9-inch by 9-inch square. But you could make this an 18 by 18 inches, whatever, as long as there are sort of multiples of 3. I think that is when you're starting out, or sort of multiples of 3 inches. That is a really good way to start out your drawing. But for your first drawing, I would encourage you to work at the 9-inch by 9-inch size. And there we go. We have our finished drawing area set up with a quadrant all ready to go. And I'm just having a look at it, looking like it's ready to go. So here we go on the next step. Okay, now that we found the center of our paper, we want to take our tile that we made and line up the original square's left and bottom edges to the vertical and the horizontal lines you drew on your paper. So in this case, my number 1, the one that I cut out and flipped, is on the top. And my number 2, the one that I cut out and flipped, is on the right. My number 3 is at the bottom, and my number 4 is on the left. And that is actually, let me see here. It's actually the mirror reflected part from what I originally cut out. So I'm going to be very careful tracing that. I'm using a mechanical pencil so I get a really nice line. It's very fine and it gets really close to the cardboard edge of my tile template. See, and I'm right in the center where that corner is. Hope everybody can see that. Okay, now I'm going to take my tile. I'm going to pull it off. I can see where that shape is drawn. And I'm going to flip it over. And I'm going to rotate it so you can see where the object number 2, that line number 2, fits in with where the other part of the 4 was. And really it's just a matter, once you get your first tessellation tile drawing down, is just flip and rotate and you can see where your puzzle piece fits. In my case, I've got a bit of a complex shape, so it took a little bit of time to just sort of figure out where I wanted to start with it and where I want to have it show up. But it can be a little mind-bending. All right, so I've got that second shape traced and in place. I'm just going to take a minute to look at it and get my brain to think about it and sort of feel where that next shape is that I can find for that next puzzle piece. And I'm flipping it, and then I'm tracing it. So you can see where the reflection is between the two that are at diagonal there. Sort of that long area in there. And I'm like, oh, nope, that doesn't fit. Yeah, there we go. It's reflecting. So that's the reflective image of the second image that I drew. So I'm just going to trace the bottom edge of that. And be careful that you make sure that you're pretty accurate. Flipping it again. And this is where they're sort of going to fall off the page a little bit. But it's just a matter of flipping and rotating them so that you can find out where those next pieces are. And you just want to fill up that 9" by 9" square area. Yeah, I'm just checking and double checking, and I'm just like, oh yeah, that's a familiar face, but that's not exactly right. So again, if your image is a little more simplistic than the one that I have, you're going to be able to capture this right away and use just a fairly simple initial tile rotation. I admit I have trouble with these, but every time I do them, I really appreciate them because I learn so much and my brain is stretching a little bit and I'm learning new things. All right, I'm just filling out the rest of that 9" by 9" square, and then I'm just going to use my eraser and get rid of those quadrant lines before I begin the final drawing. I want it to be nice and clean and look and make sure that everything sort of lines up and is ready to go. And now I'm ready to make my final drawing. And I might want to play around with some ideas around whether I want to use the fish, whether I want to use any of the original options that I did, or if I want to explore more of them. But I have a really great base to learn and to see sort of what I might make as far as an interesting rotation tessellation. So thanks for joining, and I'll see you in the next step as we fill these in.